When I married Adrian 3 years ago, I thought I was gaining a loving family. Instead, I walked straight into a battlefield where his mother, Victoria Thornfield, had already decided I was the enemy. What she did not know was that I had been preparing for war my entire life, and when she finally crossed the line, I was ready to show her exactly what happens when you underestimate someone. Adrian and I met in graduate school, both studying international business. He was charming, intelligent, and refreshingly down-to-earth despite coming from serious money. The Thornfield family owned a chain of luxury hotels across the East Coast, and their net worth was somewhere in the 8-figure range. Adrian never flaunted his wealth, which made me fall for him even harder. Our relationship moved quickly, and within 18 months he proposed. That was when I first met Victoria Thornfield, and the temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. She was everything I expected from a wealthy matriarch. Perfectly coiffed, designer everything, and an attitude that could cut glass. From the moment I walked into their Manhattan penthouse, she looked at me like I was something unpleasant she had stepped in. Victoria made her feelings clear from day one. During our first dinner together, she asked me pointed questions about my background, my family's financial situation, and my career prospects. When I mentioned that my parents were middle-class teachers, she literally smirked. When I told her I was working as a junior analyst while finishing my MBA, she practically rolled her eyes. The worst part was how she treated me in front of Adrian. She would make subtle digs about my clothes, my education, my accent. She once told me that I should really consider getting some media training before any family events because I needed to learn how to present myself properly. Adrian would get uncomfortable and try to change the subject, but he never directly confronted his mother. The engagement party was my first real taste of Victoria's cruelty. She had organized the entire event without consulting me, choosing a venue, menu, and guest list that suited her vision. When I arrived, I discovered she had invited several of Adrian's ex-girlfriends, including his college sweetheart Emma, who happened to come from another wealthy family. Victoria spent the entire evening introducing Emma to people as practically family, while barely acknowledging my presence. She told one group of guests that she was still getting used to Adrian's choice, and that sometimes love makes us overlook obvious incompatibilities. I smiled and played the gracious bride-to-be, but inside I was seething. The Real declaration of war came during the wedding planning. Victoria had very specific ideas about what kind of wedding her son should have, and none of those ideas included my input. She wanted to book the most expensive venue in the city, hire a celebrity wedding planner, and invite 500 of their closest friends. When I suggested we might want something more intimate, she laughed and said that was exactly what someone from my background would say. The breaking point came during a dress fitting. Victoria had insisted on coming along to help me choose my wedding dress. We went to the most exclusive bridal boutique in the city, where she proceeded to criticize every single dress I tried on. This one was too revealing, that one was too casual, this one made me look desperate, that one was clearly above my station. When I finally found a dress I loved, a simple but elegant design that made me feel beautiful, Victoria shook her head and announced that it was completely inappropriate for a Thornfield wedding. She called the saleswoman over and asked to see something more suitable for someone of her background. The saleswoman, clearly uncomfortable, brought out a dress that looked like it belonged in a museum. It was ornate, heavy, and completely not my style. "This is much better," Victoria declared. "It has the dignity and tradition that this family requires." She turned to me with a smile that never reached her eyes. Sometimes we have to sacrifice our personal preferences for the greater good of the family. That night, I went home and cried for 3 hours. Adrian found me and asked what was wrong, but I could not bring myself to tell him the truth. How could I explain that his mother was systematically trying to erase who I was and replace me with someone she deemed more appropriate? How could I tell him that she was making me feel like I was not good enough to be part of his family? The wedding itself was a nightmare. Victoria had overruled every single decision I tried to make, from the flowers to the music to the menu. She had even tried to change the vows, suggesting that traditional vows would be more appropriate than the personal ones Adrian and I had written. The only reason she failed was because Adrian finally put his foot down on that particular issue. On the day of the wedding, Victoria delivered her final insult. She gave a speech during the reception that was supposedly welcoming me to the family, but every word was designed to remind everyone present that I was an outsider who had somehow managed to infiltrate their world. She talked about how the family prided itself on maintaining certain standards and traditions, and how she hoped I would be able to rise to meet those expectations. The honeymoon provided a brief respite, but as soon as we returned, Victoria's campaign resumed with renewed vigor. She would call Adrian constantly, always with some family emergency that required his immediate attention. She would plan family events and forget to invite me, then act surprised when I expressed hurt feelings. She would make comments about how I was clearly not adjusting well to the family's lifestyle, and maybe I needed some guidance. The worst part was how she began to poison Adrian's mind against me. She would plant little seeds of doubt about my motives, my commitment to the family, my ability to be the kind of wife he needed. She never said anything directly, but she was a master of the subtle manipulation. She would say things like, "I just worry that she does not understand what it means to be part of this family," or, "I hope she is not going to try to change you." Things escalated when Victoria decided to involve herself in our finances. She had always been the one who managed the family's money, and she expected to continue doing so even after Adrian got married. She wanted access to our joint accounts, she wanted to approve our major purchases, and she wanted to set up a trust fund that would give her control over Adrian's inheritance. When I objected, she lost her mind. She accused me of being a gold digger who was trying to steal her son's money. She said I was obviously only interested in the family's wealth, and that I was manipulating Adrian to get what I wanted. She even suggested that Adrian get a post-nuptial agreement to protect himself from my obvious financial motivations. The final straw came during a family dinner 6 months after our wedding. Victoria had invited Emma, Adrian's ex-girlfriend, to join us for dinner. She spent the entire evening comparing me unfavorably to Emma, talking about how Emma understood the family's values and traditions, how Emma would have made such a wonderful addition to the family. When I excused myself to go to the bathroom, I overheard Victoria talking to Emma in the hallway. She was telling Emma that she was convinced Adrian had made a terrible mistake marrying me, and that she was working on a plan to fix the situation. She said she had been documenting all of my inappropriate behavior, and that she was going to present Adrian with evidence that I was not suitable to be part of the family. That was the moment I realized that Victoria was not just being difficult. She was actively trying to destroy my marriage. She was not going to stop until she had driven me away from Adrian and out of the family permanently. I had two choices. I could let her win, or I could fight back. I chose to fight. The first thing I did was start documenting everything. Every insult, every manipulation, every attempt to undermine my relationship with Adrian. I bought a small recording device and began secretly recording our conversations. I kept detailed notes about her behavior, including dates, times, and witnesses. I was building a case, and I was going to make sure it was airtight. While I was gathering evidence, I also began doing some research into the Thornfield family finances. Victoria had always been very secretive about the family's money, but I had learned a few things during my business studies about how to find information about privately held companies. What I discovered was shocking. The Thornfield hotel chain was in serious financial trouble. They had been losing money for years, and they were deeply in debt. Victoria had been hiding the family's financial problems from Adrian, making him believe that the family was still wealthy when in reality, they were on the verge of bankruptcy. She had been using Adrian's trust fund to keep the business afloat, and she was getting desperate. That explained why she was so threatened by me. She needed Adrian to marry someone wealthy, who could bring money into the family. She needed him to marry someone like Emma, whose family had money and connections that could help save the business. My middle-class background made me not just an inappropriate choice, but a financially dangerous one. But Victoria had made one crucial mistake. She had assumed that I was exactly what I appeared to be, a middle-class girl who had gotten lucky by marrying into wealth. What she did not know was that I had been building my own fortune for years. My parents might have been teachers, but they had also been incredibly smart investors. They had bought real estate in up-and-coming neighborhoods, invested in tech stocks before they became mainstream, and built a portfolio that was worth millions. When they passed away in a car accident during my junior year of college, they left everything to me. I had kept my inheritance secret, not because I was ashamed of it, but because I wanted to make sure that Adrian loved me for who I was, not for what I had. I had been living modestly, working my junior analyst job, and letting everyone assume that I was just a regular middle-class girl who had gotten lucky. Victoria's assumption that I was a gold digger was about to become the biggest mistake of her life. I began implementing my plan slowly and carefully. First, I started making subtle changes to my appearance and behavior. I began wearing more expensive clothes, getting my hair done at exclusive salons, and carrying myself with more confidence. When Victoria made her usual snide comments about my background, I would just smile and say something like, "Appearances can be deceiving." Next, I began dropping hints about my true financial situation. I would mention casually that I was considering some investment opportunities, or that I had been talking to a financial advisor about diversifying my portfolio. When Victoria asked where I had gotten the money to invest, I would just smile mysteriously and change the subject. The real revelation came during a family dinner, where Victoria was once again going on about the importance of family traditions and maintaining certain standards. She was making her usual digs about how some people just do not understand what it means to be part of a family with history and prestige. That was when I decided it was time to drop the first bomb. "You know, Victoria," I said with a sweet smile, "I have been thinking about what you said about family history and prestige. I completely agree that it is important to maintain certain standards." I paused to take a sip of my wine. That is why I was so surprised to learn about the financial difficulties the family business has been experiencing. The color drained from Victoria's face. "I do not know what you are talking about," she said, but her voice was shaking. "Oh, come now," I said, still smiling. "You do not need to pretend with me. I know about the debt, the declining revenues, the fact that you have been using Adrian's trust fund to keep the hotels afloat. I have to say, it is quite impressive how you have managed to maintain the facade of wealth while the business crumbles around you." Victoria looked like she was going to faint. "How could you possibly know about that? That information is confidential." "I have my sources," I said. "What I find interesting is how you have been hiding the truth from Adrian. Does he know that his inheritance is essentially gone? Does he know that the family fortune is built on debt and false appearances?" Adrian looked confused and hurt. "What are you talking about? Mother, is this true?" Victoria was trapped and she knew it. She could either admit that she had been lying to him for years, or she could try to deflect and make me the villain. She chose the latter. "She has obviously been spying on us," Victoria said, her voice shrill with panic. "She has been digging into our private financial information. This is exactly what I was talking about when I said she could not be trusted." "Actually," I said, reaching into my purse and pulling out a thick folder, "I have been doing a lot more than just researching your finances. I have been documenting everything you have said and done to me over the past year and a half." I opened the folder and began reading from my notes. October 15th, family dinner. "You told the Hendersons that you were still getting used to Adrian's choice, and that sometimes love makes us overlook obvious incompatibilities." October 22nd, wedding dress fitting. "You told the saleswoman that I needed something more suitable for someone of my background, because I clearly did not understand what was appropriate for a Thornfield wedding." Victoria's face was getting redder with each entry I read. "You have been recording our private conversations? That is illegal." "Actually, it is not," I said. "I checked with a lawyer. In this state, only one party needs to consent to recording a conversation. And since I was part of all of these conversations, I was perfectly within my rights to record them." I pulled out my phone and hit play. Victoria's voice filled the room. "She is obviously only interested in the family's wealth. I am convinced she is a gold digger who is manipulating Adrian to get what she wants. I am working on a plan to present Adrian with evidence that she is not suitable to be part of this family." The silence in the room was deafening. Adrian looked at his mother with a mixture of shock and disgust. "How could you say those things about my wife?" But I was not done yet. I had saved the best for last. "You know what the really ironic part is, Victoria?" I said, standing up and walking over to where she was sitting. You have spent all this time trying to convince everyone that I am a gold digger, when in reality, I am probably wealthier than your entire family. I pulled out another folder and placed it on the table in front of her. This is my financial portfolio. As you can see, my net worth is approximately $12 million. I inherited it from my parents, who were much better investors than you apparently realize. Victoria opened the folder with shaking hands. Her eyes went wide as she looked at the numbers. This cannot be real. Oh, it is very real, I said. I have been quietly building my wealth while you have been loudly destroying yours. The difference is, I have never felt the need to prove my worth by putting other people down. I turned to Adrian, who was staring at me in shock. I am sorry I did not tell you about the money before. I wanted to make sure you loved me for who I was, not for what I had. But I could not let your mother continue to destroy our marriage with her lies and manipulations. Adrian stood up and walked over to his mother. Is everything she said true? Have you really been hiding the family's financial problems from me? Have you been using my trust fund to cover the debts? Victoria tried to defend herself, but the evidence was overwhelming. The recordings, the financial documents, the documented pattern of abuse and manipulation. It was all there in black and white. I was trying to protect you, she said weakly. I was trying to protect the family. By lying to me? By trying to destroy my marriage? By treating my wife like she was beneath us? Adrian's voice was filled with anger and disappointment. How is any of that protecting the family? The confrontation continued for another hour, but the outcome was clear. Victoria's reign of terror was over. Her lies had been exposed, her manipulations had been documented, and her financial secrets had been revealed. She had no power left to wield over me or Adrian. But I was still not satisfied. Victoria had put me through a year and a half of hell, and I wanted to make sure she faced consequences for her actions. I wanted to make sure she could never hurt another daughter-in-law the way she had hurt me. Over the next few weeks, I began implementing the second phase of my plan. I had learned that Victoria was very concerned about her reputation in society. She served on several charity boards, hosted fundraising events, and prided herself on being seen as a pillar of the community. Her social standing was everything to her. I began strategically leaking information about the family's financial problems to the right people. I made sure that the story of Victoria's deception and the near bankruptcy of the hotel chain reached the ears of gossip columnists and society reporters. I was careful to present the information as concerned whispers rather than malicious gossip, but the effect was the same. Within a month, Victoria's carefully constructed facade began to crumble. The charity boards began asking uncomfortable questions about her ability to fulfill her financial commitments. The society events she had hosted for years were suddenly being moved to other venues. The friends who had once sought her approval were now avoiding her calls. The final blow came when I arranged for Adrian to discover some additional information about his mother's financial dealings. It turned out that Victoria had not just been using his trust fund to cover business expenses. She had been stealing money from several of the charities she served on, using her position to redirect funds to her personal accounts. When Adrian confronted her with this information, Victoria finally broke down and admitted everything. She had been living a lie for years, desperately trying to maintain the appearance of wealth while everything around her fell apart. She had convinced herself that the ends justified the means, that lying and stealing and manipulating were acceptable as long as she could preserve the family's reputation. But her actions had destroyed the very thing she was trying to protect. The family name was now associated with scandal and fraud. The business was beyond saving. And worst of all, she had lost the love and respect of her son. Adrian filed for divorce from the family business, liquidating his remaining assets and walking away from the hotel chain entirely. He also made it clear to Victoria that until she got professional help for her issues and made genuine amends for her behavior, she would not be welcome in our lives. The charity fraud was reported to the authorities, and Victoria faced criminal charges. She ultimately pleaded guilty to embezzlement and was sentenced to 2 years of probation and community service. She was also required to pay restitution to the charities she had stolen from. But perhaps the most satisfying consequence was watching Victoria's social world collapse around her. The woman who had spent years judging others and determining who was worthy of respect found herself on the receiving end of that same judgment. Her former friends whispered about her behind her back, speculating about how long she had been living a lie, and wondering what else she might have been hiding. The newspapers had a field day with the story. Headlines like "Hotel Heiress Hides Massive Debt" and "Charity Board Member Charged with Embezzlement" appeared in the society pages. The very publications that had once featured Victoria at glamorous events were now documenting her downfall. I had achieved something that I never thought possible. I had not just defended myself against Victoria's attacks. I had completely destroyed her ability to hurt anyone else. I had exposed her lies, revealed her crimes, and stripped away the power she had wielded over her family and social circle. But the best part was how the experience had strengthened my relationship with Adrian. Seeing his mother's true nature had been painful for him, but it had also opened his eyes to the kind of person he had married. He was amazed by my strength, my intelligence, and my ability to stand up for myself in the face of such sustained abuse. "I am so proud of you," he told me one evening as we sat in our new apartment, far away from his family's toxic influence. "I cannot believe you put up with her behavior for so long without fighting back." "I was building my case," I said with a smile. "I wanted to make sure that when I finally struck back, it would be devastating and complete. I wanted to make sure she could never hurt anyone the way she hurt me." Adrian pulled me close and kissed me softly. "You are incredible. I am so lucky to have you as my wife." Looking back on the experience now, I realized that Victoria's attempts to destroy me actually made me stronger. Her constant attacks forced me to develop resilience and strategic thinking. Her financial manipulation taught me the importance of financial independence and transparency. Her social cruelty showed me the value of genuine relationships built on respect rather than fear. Most importantly, her behavior taught me that sometimes the best defense is a good offense. Sometimes you cannot just turn the other cheek and hope that bullies will eventually get tired of tormenting you. Sometimes you have to fight back with everything you have. And sometimes you have to make sure that your victory is so complete that your enemy can never hurt you again. Victoria learned that lesson the hard way. She discovered that underestimating someone based on their background and appearance can be a fatal mistake. She found out that the quiet, unassuming daughter-in-law she had tried to destroy was actually a formidable opponent who had been planning her revenge for months. The last time I saw Victoria was at a coffee shop about 6 months after everything came to light. She was sitting alone, looking much older and more fragile than I remembered. Her designer clothes had been replaced with simple, inexpensive outfits. Her perfectly styled hair was showing gray roots. Her imperious attitude had been replaced with a defeated slump. She saw me come in and our eyes met for a moment. I could see the recognition in her face, followed quickly by shame and fear. She gathered her things and left without saying a word. I felt a momentary pang of sympathy for her. She had lost everything. Her money, her reputation, her family, her friends. But then I remembered all the nights I had cried myself to sleep because of her cruelty. All the times she had made me feel small and worthless. All the ways she had tried to destroy my marriage and my happiness. She had made her choices, and now she was living with the consequences. I had simply made sure that those consequences matched the severity of her actions. Adrian and I are happier now than we have ever been. We have built a life together based on honesty, respect, and genuine love. We have learned to communicate better, to trust each other completely, and to face challenges together as a team. We have also learned the importance of setting boundaries with toxic people, even when those people are family members. We have created a peaceful, loving home where manipulation and cruelty have no place. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how harshly I dealt with Victoria. They suggest that maybe I went too far, that maybe I should have tried to work things out with her instead of destroying her life so completely. But I do not regret it for a second. Victoria had every opportunity to treat me with basic human decency, and she chose not to. She had multiple chances to back down from her campaign of harassment and manipulation, and she chose to escalate instead. She made her own bed, and I simply made sure she had to lie in it. The truth is, Victoria was a bully who had been getting away with her behavior for years because no one had ever stood up to her. She had learned that she could intimidate and manipulate people without facing any real consequences. I taught her that she was wrong. I also showed other people in similar situations that they do not have to accept abuse from in-laws or anyone else. They do not have to smile and endure cruelty in the name of keeping the peace. They have the right to defend themselves, and sometimes the best way to do that is to go on the offensive. My story is a reminder that bullies often choose their victims based on perceived weakness. Victoria targeted me because she thought I was a naive, middle-class girl who would be easy to intimidate. She never imagined that I had the resources, the intelligence, and the determination to fight back effectively. When you are dealing with a narcissistic bully like Victoria, you cannot expect them to develop empathy or change their behavior out of the goodness of their hearts. The only thing they understand is power, and the only way to stop them is to demonstrate that you have more power than they do. I had the power of truth, the power of evidence, and the power of financial independence. I used all of these weapons strategically and effectively, and I achieved a victory that was both complete and permanent. Victoria will never be able to hurt another daughter-in-law the way she hurt me. She no longer has the money, the reputation, or the social connections that gave her power over other people. She has been reduced to exactly what she always accused me of being. Someone with no real worth who has to rely on other people's kindness to survive. The irony is not lost on me. In her efforts to prove that I was beneath her family's standards, Victoria revealed that she was the one who lacked character, integrity, and genuine worth. In trying to expose me as a fraud, she exposed herself as the real fraud. Justice was served, karma came full circle, and the bully finally got what she deserved. Sometimes the best revenge is not just getting even, but getting so far ahead that your enemy can never catch up again. If you enjoyed this story of sweet revenge and justice being served, make sure to subscribe to Revenge Janet for more incredible tales of karma, betrayal, and ultimate satisfaction. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, so you never miss our latest uploads. Share your own revenge stories in the comments below. We love hearing from our community of justice seekers. Remember, karma always finds a way, and we are here to document every satisfying moment of it. Thank you for watching, and remember, the truth always wins in the end.